All right, guys, it's about that time. Another edition of the Mississippi Gridiron Friday Night Scores Show. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be about 20 minutes. We'll run through all the scores real quick. We'll go through the top 10 for the whole state. This reminds me, I didn't do that top 25 last week. This week it's happening. I'll do one this week. And I do want to explain something about the rankings here in just a minute. But big games all over the state tonight. We had a lot of people that were in a bye week last week and this week, but still a lot of big games around the state, and we'll get to some of those. If you have top performers, just like always, the little section on the side of the screen, if you send me a comment on Facebook or on X, it will show up on your screen and you can be part of the show. If you have a score that I don't have, appreciate getting that from you. Just DM me or shoot me a I guess there's still posts on X, not tweets anymore, but whatever you want to call it, shoot it to me. But we are brought to you by Capital Ortho, capitalortho.com. Hold on one second. I got something for you. How many times am I going to do that? You would think somebody that's follically challenged like this, that I would have the hat prepared, but not so much. However, that is an excellent way to work in product placement into the show. Capitalortho.com. Sent a buddy over there today to have a knee checked out. Appreciate Capital Ortho being part of this show and all of the what we're doing with Mississippi Gridiron every year. 13 years, no, 15 years now. This is the 16th year that we've done the magazine. Also brought to you by Soundcom, soundcomav.com, and our friends at Country Meat Packers, Henry Cooper down with Country Pleasing Sausage down in Florence. We're also brought to you by The Rogue in Jackson and Malone Roofing Services. Let's get right to this real quick. I have some of these scores already prepared. Top 10 scores around the state and who did what tonight. West Point came into tonight the number one ranked team in the state, and they didn't do anything to change my opinion there. 50-13 winner over Pontotoc in a game that wasn't close. Tupelo, number 2, had a game with South Haven tonight. Tupelo ends up pulling that out. I say pull out. Yeah, Tupelo pulled it out 43-20. Pulled out a nail biter. Tupelo's that good. And I have some of the stats from that Tupelo game tonight prepared. As Tupelo got back on track after, gosh, I can't remember now if it was last week or I think it was 2 weeks ago. They dropped the game to West Point in what was a tight game. But tonight, not so tight. Just a few of the numbers. That's weird going through Twitter and seeing myself on it. That's always weird. That when you see yourself on the screen or you hear your voice, always weird. But some of the stats from that Tupelo game tonight: 331 yards of total offense for Tupelo. South Haven 171 or 174 rather. And I know I saw those numbers at the half, and they were more lopsided than that. Tupelo dominated that tonight. So they're back on track. 43-20 winners over South Haven. Maybe the game of the night, or one of them, is Picayune and Pascagoula. That's a game at Pascagoula. And I had that down as one of the games I was watching tonight, even though Pascagoula came into that one with a record of 1-4, but Pascagoula challenges themselves in the non-conference. They've played a schedule. And anyway, Picayune picks up a win, but that's a tight one. 38-36 is your score. That just lets me know kind of what I already knew. Both of those teams are capable of doing something in the postseason. Little surprised at the scoring just because both of those defenses I think are pretty good. But a lot of points scored, 38-36. As we start getting down into region play, some of these schools only have 3 weeks after tonight. And of course, the 7A schools, your larger schools, are looking at 4 weeks until their postseason. They get 1 week less of the playoffs. But I mean, we're getting down to it. You know, it's hard to believe, but we are. Um, Another game tonight, a matchup of top 10 teams. Germantown played Starkville. Starkville came in ranked number 4 in the state. They traveled to Germantown, and Germantown handed them 45-28. I got mixed up there. I wasn't going to say handed them their tail or handled them. I wasn't sure which way to go. I always want to be respectful to the players. Germantown had their way though, 45-28. That Starkville team is young, so I'm not shocked at that. I think the thing with the Yellow Jackets is you just want to be playing well when you get to the playoffs. Get to the playoffs, but once you get there, you want to be playing well. Germantown's good. Um, Offensive line solid, running backs, defense. Coach Mitchell's done a great job with that team this year. They can beat anybody on any given night. So I'm not shocked at the score of that one. Maybe a little bit, but I'm not surprised because Germantown's done that to teams. Oxford was open. Ocean Springs 42-21 over number 9 D'Iberville in our second matchup tonight of top 10 teams around the state. Ocean Springs was number 6. Remember last week, Ocean Springs drops a big game to Gulfport, and they get back on track tonight. I still think Ocean Springs is good. And look, I want to save some of this. I'm going to get to these messages here in just a minute too. But you guys can see these scores coming in. I do want to do a breakdown on the classes. And what I'll do is tomorrow I'll spend some time on that, kind of where we are at this point in the season. 7A South is as wide open as I can ever remember it being. I mean, you're talking, Brandon has struggled, but they won last week over Northwest Rankin. They're off tonight. Brandon, Ocean Springs, Gulfport, Petal we'll get to in a minute. They beat Oak Grove tonight. Both of those teams are in this thing. I'm not sure how this is going to go in the South, but it is nice to have some parity. Grenada 42-11 over Center Hill. Grenada came in number 10. Columbia is number 7. I know I'm not going in sequential. That's not how I do things. Columbia 38-14 over Macomb. That's a big win for Columbia just in how they did it. I thought that could have been a close game, a matchup of, I believe, 2 unbeaten teams, and Columbia handles Macomb tonight. The Oak Grove game. Oak Grove, number 8 in the state. Petal wins 28-21. That's Petal's first win over Oak Grove in a minute. I don't know if it's been 4 or 5 years. I think maybe 5. So Marcus Boyles goes back as head coach of Petal and is continuing to rebuild that thing. And they pick up a big win over Oak Grove. And you've got to include Petal in this discussion too of who's going to come out of the South in 7A. That's your top 10 teams for the whole state. Real quick, I'll go through a few of these messages. Hey, Sam, appreciate that. Tylertown 32-0 over St. Stanislaus. That's a big win for the Chiefs. I've actually been to a couple of games down there in Tylertown. This is probably 4 years ago when they had all those receivers coming through there that could really run. Had a good time down there meeting their people. Winona 31. What is that, Cody? Okay, I got you. 131. Let me check that out. See if that's what I think it is there. Noxubee County, they end up losing to Winona tonight. That's a fact. 31-26, Winona with the win. Winona's a solid program. So not shocked in that sense, but Noxubee County, I thought they had a good chance to come out, and obviously they still could because we're talking about the regular season here. That's a huge win for Winona. Also, Salem West Lincoln, Salem 56-6. So Wildcats' longest win in school history, 5-2 now, 1-0 in the district. It's a big win. The Academy top 10 real quick, and then I want to get to some of the rankings just to give you guys an idea of how I do them and what I'm going to do this week. MRA didn't play tonight. They had an open date, which they've deserved after the first month and a half of their season. They've challenged themselves. They needed an off week. and I'll get to them in a minute. They're not in my top 10 just because I do that top 10 just big schools, 4A through 7A. Historically, I've always done that. That's why I do a little 10, which I'm about to phase out, and an MAIS top 10. That's about to change. MRA is one of the top 10 teams in the state, hands down, no doubt. You'll find out this week where I would have them. Jackson Academy came into tonight and ranked number 2 in the state in our rankings, and they had a big matchup with Jackson Prep, which was number 4. JA gets that win 16-7. Look, give Prep credit, they kept that score close, but I kind of followed that game in the second half. JA controlled that game, in at least in terms of total yardage, and couldn't capitalize on scoring drives, couldn't finish drives, but JA dominated that game. And a big reason why, TJ White, I know, had 4 sacks for them. Tennessee linebacker commit. That is a heck of a player. Park Lane big over Brookhaven Academy, 35-0. Park Lane came in ranked 3rd in our MAIS top 10 rankings. Magnolia Heights at number 5. They beat Starkville Academy 42-14. Mag Heights has a real shot this year. If you follow them, they have a real shot to do something in the playoffs. Hartfield, another game I kept up with most of the second half. They handled Lamar School. Hartfield was ranked 7th. And the truth is, Hartfield's one of the 4 best teams in the academies. It's hard to rank them up there when I think they came into tonight 1-4, I believe 1-4, 1-5, something like that. But they win 42-7. Here's the big news from the Hartfield game. Braylon Womack has been out, and they still have some guys banged up. Katie Ketchens has been hurt. They played tonight, but listening to the broadcast, Braylon only played on the offensive side of the football for the Hawks as they try to get him healthy for the playoff run. Katie Ketchens played tonight. I'm not sure how many snaps. I can't get into those kind of details because I don't have them. Point being, if Hartfield gets into the playoffs healthy, then they have a shot, just because on any given night, they're going to have possibly the couple best players on the field. And without a doubt, the best player on the field with Braylon Womack. And whenever you have that, you have a shot against anybody. But they win the night 42-7. Heritage big over Pillow 28-7. Capaya 35-0 over Simpson. Simpson people, those are friends of mine. That's my people down Simpson County. I'm from Lawrence County, but a ton of friends at Simpson Academy. I was on my way to that game to shoot it, and when I checked the score, it was already 28-0. So a couple of my friends, if you're watching, I was coming to that game to shoot it tonight. I'm going to catch one before the year's over. But that game got a little out of hand. Capaya's good, though. That's a good football team. Tri-County was big over St. Joe. Tri-County number 9 in the academies, 48-6. And Leake Academy with George Wilcox under center, 41-14. As we get Tri-County and Leake Academy still look like they are destined to face each other in, potential 3A championship game in the MAIS. It'd be hard for somebody else to get in there. It's possible, but I think those are the 2 teams you're looking at. A couple other notes here. This from Cody. Wesson wins the shootout of unbeaten 2A teams, 49-41 over Lloyd Star. Cody, you'd be happy to know. I did have that on my list here in terms of teams I wanted to check out before we get off the broadcast. And appreciate that, Jack. Pearl 38-17 over Meridian. Pearl has a big one next week. They play, I don't know if they host it or if they go to Northwest Rankin, but that's a big ball game. Somebody's going to get left out in Region 3 7A. I mean, you're thinking Brandon, and Northwest Rankin blew a big chance last week at Brandon. They lost 3-0, and Brandon gets out of Northwest Rankin last week with a win. That's big for the Bulldogs. But you have Brandon, Oak Grove, and now looks like Petal sitting there. And maybe Oak Grove is a tier down. I don't know. But then let's say you've got Petal and Brandon at the top. Then you still have Oak Grove, Northwest Rankin, who I still think, especially offensively, Northwest Rankin should put up points, and they got shut out last week. They have talent. I don't know. I don't really know what's going on there, but they're just struggling to get things going offensively. And then you have Pearl, which is a huge matchup next week as those two teams collide. Whoever loses that, then you're in danger of missing the playoffs. So with 4 weeks left for 7A schools, that's a huge matchup next week. Let's see what else we have here. Raleigh was big game tonight. They beat Forest, a matchup of 5-1 teams. Raleigh wins 31-18. Kosciuszko came into tonight undefeated. They were going to Louisville, and Louisville 4-2, but that's a little misleading just because they schedule that they play every year. And Louisville gets a big win, 29-24 over Cozy tonight, and that was a big matchup. Back and forth game could have gone either way. So we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But the Wildcats get a big win in the regular season. And there's some other games. I had Ridgeland was undefeated with Warren Central, unless something happened late in that game. And I'll check. I believe Warren Central was up pretty big in that one, and they end up winning. Wow, 21-14 in a game that got close. Ridgeland was undefeated. DK Wallace, a kid under center for Ridgeland, gives them a chance. He'll be playing in the Bernard Blackwell All-Star Classic when the season's over. Let me check a couple more of these. Kemper County 34-18 over Velma. That was a good ball game. I believe I've gotten most of these other ones. Just local here in the metro area. St. Andrews goes down on the road to Southeast Lauderdale, 26-15. Couple others, and then we want to get back to this top 10. Shannon's a winner over Houston, 14-6. Don't really have any more notes for that one tonight. DeSoto Central, a big win over. Did they play Lewisburg tonight? I believe that was Lewisburg. They played 49-14. That's a big win for DeSoto Central. Of course, their quarterback will all be pulling for here in a couple of months in the Miss Al All-Star game. Auburn commit, but hopefully has a big game in the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game before he heads to Auburn. King White had a big night tonight for Germantown. He throws for 393 and 4 touchdowns. So shout out to King White, a kid I've been following since probably the 9th grade. And it helps when you have somebody like Keyshawn Coleman at wide receiver. A kid I know is committed to Tulane, had 9 catches for 160 yards, a couple of touchdowns. What else do we have here before we get off of the tonight's broadcast? Maybe talk a little college here before we get out of here. Miko, thanks for that. Northwest at Pearl next week. That's a huge game for both of those teams. Win and you're not locked into a playoff spot, but drop that game next week and you're in trouble. Like you've got to knock off some teams coming down the stretch. I still think Northwest Rankin has a chance. Look, of all the years in the South, the teams that are kind of on the outside looking in, Northwest Rankin is one of those teams. Trying to think, Petal is they're in more solid footing with a win over Oak Grove than Northwest Rankin is. But teams like that were on the way up this year, of all the years, if you want a chance to do something, this is it. Because, Brandon hasn't looked great. Oak Grove hasn't looked great. Ocean Springs was rolling, then Gulfport gets them. And Gulfport's had a game or two this year where they weren't great, but they have a shot wide open. Of all the years, if a team is going to jump up and do something, this is it in the South. And then in the North in 7A, I still think everybody's going to be going through Tupelo. Nothing has changed there. Just looking at some of these top performers that have been submitted early, if I wanted to give somebody out before we get off this, 43-8, Choctaw Central with a win tonight over. I know they played Aberdeen. Choctaw County has a chance. They have a chance to go back-to-back this year. And then back through our top 10 real quick. That's all I want to get to tonight. Then back through the top 10 real quick, and we'll do a little college before we jump off of here. You had West Point huge over Pontotoc 50-13, Tupelo 43-20 over South Haven. Picayune Pascagoula was a great game. Not shocked at that. Picayune was ranked third, 38-36. Starkville 28 to 28-45 losers to Germantown. Germantown gets that win 45-28 over the Yellow Jackets. Man, it's wide open. Maybe Germantown can challenge Tupelo in the North. We'll see. Germantown has talent. Teams tonight that kind of catch my attention in terms of playing well. Columbia's getting it done. 38-14 over Macomb. They came in ranked number 7. That's going to be a team that's difficult to deal with in the playoffs. Petal has to be one of those teams. If you're giving out game balls, there's teams of the night. Petal has to be in that mix. Columbia has to be in that mix. Maybe you can throw Ocean Springs in there just because there's big winners over D'Iberville. JA, on track with a big win over Prep. For JA, that's a big win. I think that's the first time they've beaten Prep since probably 2020. That's top of my head, though. 2020 or 2019, that's probably the last time they won that. So that's a big win for JA tonight. And then some of these other ones, like Louisville, to be able to beat Kosciuszko 29-24 in a matchup of two really good football teams, that's a big one. And then tomorrow, I'm going to tell you guys what you need to be watching before we check out of here. I know Ole Miss has a big one. My family's big Ole Miss fans. My kids are going to be here watching, and I know that's going to happen. I'm a big fan of my kids, still pull for the Rebels, but I've turned into a bigger fan of Connor, Caleb, and Camo. Cameron, of course, anybody named Cameron in the South, his nickname was going to be Camo. That's how that is. And a shout out to my youngest. Just wrapped up his last fall wood bat league. Had a really good year. 17 innings, ERA under 2. I think it was 20. Oh, he's gonna be mad if I get this wrong. Maybe 26 strikeouts, 8 walks, something like that, and hit 430. Will be a senior at Northwest Rankin this year. So shout out to Camo. Didn't expect to give that out. And also Caleb, watched him today play at Colin as they're wrapping up their World Series. He's going to have a big year. And then my oldest at Jack State getting ready to pitch in his junior year on the field, senior year in the classroom. Of course, I've got to say something about my kids before we get off a show. That you can't be mad at that. This message comes in from Sandy on Facebook. Eric Beasley, I knew he ran for a ton. I didn't get to hear Yubi say it. Beasley goes for 250 tonight and a touchdown in the win over Jackson Prep. I know the yardage in that game was lopsided, even though the score was just 16-7. Prep managed to hang in that. But you could tell Beasley was racking up the yardage. Your big games tomorrow on a college level, just in terms of your top 25. What time is that Ole Miss game? They play Washington State early. Good. I want to watch that early. 11:45. Ole Miss ranked 4th in the country. That's crazy to me. Still, Ole Miss ranked 4th, 5-0 with a real shot at the college football playoff. Here's some Mississippi flavor here too early tomorrow. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 17, Illinois. Luke Altmaier under center for Illinois. Of course, that's somebody that was at Ole Miss a couple of seasons. Former Starkville Yellow Jacket standout. Man, Luke's a great dude. Happy it worked out for him at Illinois. Deserves all of the attention and accolades that's coming his way. Seemed like an awesome kid. And his dad, Dr. Altmaier, up that way. But that's an 11 o'clock kick. Alabama, Missouri. Here we go. Here's some more Mississippi flavor for you before we get out of here. And I can tell you a story about this one. Alabama 8, Missouri 14. That's an 11 o'clock kick. Man, big games early. Missouri led by not only is Ahmad Hardy, the SEC's leading rusher, just his yards after contact would be leading the SEC's total yards. He has something like 500 plus yards after contact. I'm from Lawrence County, so I'm familiar with Ahmad. when he was coming through there, had a chance to talk to him, talk to his dad, and was just begging for offers that he wasn't getting. Never understood that. If you saw Ahmad play in high school, he just looked like a younger version of exactly what he is now. And if you follow recruiting much, some of these kids, if you don't get offers and the longer that goes, it's like everybody wonders, well, what's wrong with that guy? And there tends to be a lot of groupthink in college recruiting. But of course, he goes to, I believe it was ULM, where he just killed it there. And now he's at Missouri doing what he's doing. Happy for that kid. Dudes that grind and get there, I have the utmost respect for. Other top 25 matchups. Here's another good one. 3 Oregon and 7 Indiana. That's a 2:30 kick. Man, we have a big day of college football tomorrow. See what's at night tomorrow. Georgia Auburn. I can't imagine that's going to be close. Hugh Freeze though needs a win. Hugh, if you're watching, he's probably watching this. Would be my guess. This is a big show over in the Auburn area. Hugh, you might need that one. Auburn comes in 3-2. Georgia ranked 10th at 4-1. Moral of the story here: your big game is going to be early tomorrow. South Carolina LSU is not bad. South Carolina is not ranked, but that's two good football teams. LSU 11. I think LSU would have to be my most hated team. It would not even no question. Of all the teams, growing up an Ole Miss fan, of course, I'm not going to be a fan of LSU. But I think what happened when Brian Kelly did the fake Cajun accent, remember that day at the pep rally? It amped up, the hate level several notches. So LSU, South Carolina, I'm pulling for you. Get it done. I think that's going to wrap it up. All right, everybody. If you hung in this long, God bless you. We'll do this again next week. All right, I'll put out a top 25 this week. I said that last week too, but I really didn't mean it last week. I do mean it this week. Top 25 that will have the academy teams mixed in with the publics. So you'll find out where I'd have MRA. Where would I have them? Top 10. I mean, would I have them number one? MRA is good. Jackson Academy has a good team, but MRA is a really good football team. This from Nicholas, real quick before we get out of here on Facebook. Columbia 38. Yeah, that's a huge win for you guys over Macomb. Columbia, man, Columbia's top notch. That's a good football team. But top 25 coming out this week, and we'll do a breakdown of each class that I'll put online, and we'll see where we are. Roughly a month left in the regular season. But I always appreciate you guys. Appreciate my friends at soundcomav.com, capitalortho.com. Both of them been with me a long time. A big reason I'm still able to do this every year. Appreciate them. Same with Henry Cooper with Country Pleasing Sausage and Country Meat Packers down in Florence. Shout out to Luke Abney at The Rogue, of course, in Jackson. If you need some nice stuff, Luke is your man. He'll hook you up. Awesome dude too, by the way. Awesome guy. You want to support local business and good people, Luke is one of. And Malone Roofing Services, Roman Malone, been in business a long time. Old teammate of mine at Cole Lynn back in the day, baseball player, crafty second baseman. Any of you know Roman, you tell him I said hello. But anyway, appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll talk to you later.